Iran announced that the state funeral for the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been postponed. It was planned for Wednesday in Tehran. The official reason for the postponement was the anticipation of unprecedented turnout. State TV saying the farewell ceremony for the martyred imam has been postponed. A new date will be announced later. Ayatollah Khamenei was killed in US-Israeli strikes on Tehran on Saturday. But the fact that Tehran is constantly being bombarded, and as we were saying, a new wave of attacks from the Israeli army has just been launched, clearly must have been in the minds of the people who decided to postpone this event. The new frontrunner to replace Ayatollah Ali Khamenei as Iran's supreme leader is now his son, Muqtada, although Ayatollah Alireza Arafi is emerging as a central figure in Iran's power structure at a moment of unprecedented turmoil, propelled into a leadership role from the ranks of top clerics after the killing of Khamenei. Well, let's get some analysis on what this all means. Sahar Razavi joins us, director of the Iranian and Middle East Studies Center at California State University. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm wondering, how important is it for the current Iranian regime to select for itself a new supreme leader quickly?
I think at this point, it's important, but stability is their primary priority. And for them, stability could mean leaving it in the hands of the temporary council, which consists of 3 people, including Alireza Arafi, who you just mentioned. This is, for them, I think, a move that will, on the one hand, protect the potential successor to Khamenei from additional strikes and potential assassination. And at the same time, they are trying to project an image of calm and stability and reassure the Iranian public that they are at the helm and that everything is in control. So the Iranian constitution technically provides for a leadership council of this nature to rule in perpetuity, but I think they will name a successor shortly.
And how will this affect any outreach from Iran towards the US and Israel in order to try to begin negotiations, if such a thing were possible?
I don't think negotiations at this point are going to be likely to happen in good faith or any kind of faith. I mean, essentially, the United States has made clear through just the recent statements from an hour ago from Caroline Leavitt, from the statements of Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump himself, that their goal is a total regime change. And for them, that means that there would be no Islamic Republic, there would be no supreme leader. And although compromise is, of course, possible, such that they may allow for a nominal retention of the structure of the Islamic Republic, but put in place figures that are willing to make deep concessions so that it would be a hollowed out Islamic Republic. That's certainly a possibility. But with what we are seeing coming out of Washington, D.C., I don't think that negotiations of this nature are likely to succeed. Trust has been completely obliterated to the extent that it was even there in the first place, tenuous though it may have been. And at this point, I don't even know that I would characterize it as negotiation, but it's either survival or capitulation as far as the Islamic Republic is concerned.
Sahar, a fresh wave of attacks has been launched by Israel on Tehran as we speak. The situation for ordinary people in Iran is something that I think preoccupies most people's minds when they look at this story, and a story which is obviously affecting more and more people as this goes along. And I wonder whether at some point or other something has to be done to bring this to a halt for the good of those people, regardless of what the supreme leader, whoever that might be, says.
Absolutely. We are seeing a civilian toll that is, in a matter of just a few days, over 1,000 people, the majority of them civilians, including the girls' school in Minab. I think the civilian toll is going to be rising sharply. It's reasonable to expect it to rise sharply in the coming days. And the more the toll rises, I think the more pressure we're going to see on the Iranian government. And then by extension, the Iranian government is going to put more pressure on the Gulf states to try to negotiate in some way with Donald Trump behind the scenes to bring this to a close. The strategy of the Iranian government right now to deal with this rising death toll of civilians is to make this war painful for the Gulf allies of the United States so that they might be able to put pressure on the United States to bring this to a close.
Some people looking at this from the outside, Sahar, might say that the government or regime, choose whichever word you like, in Iran doesn't really care about its people. Looking at what has happened in recent years, looking at the way recent protests have been treated, and basically they might be willing to pay that sacrifice, someone else's life being lost, in order to keep their regime going.
I think the clear pattern from the last 47 years of history of the Islamic Republic is that the government of Iran sees its survival as paramount, and civilian casualties they have and will continue to blame on external influences. So it is not surprising, certainly, that is a popular sentiment among observers both inside and outside Iran. And I would say that is probably not very unlike many governments in the world and in the region. Their own survival is going to be of utmost importance to them, because not only for their own self-interest, which is absolutely there, but also because if Iran is subject to foreign occupation and ground invasion and even balkanization, many, many more civilians will die. I think that is also a reasonable outcome, reasonably foreseen outcome of this kind of conflict.
Indeed, that outlook is very bleak, Sahar, but I think it's a very astute observation by yourself. And I'm wondering where we go from here in terms of how that happens, because clearly there is a regime, as you say, it's been in power since 1979. There have been protests against it recently. I'm wondering, can you give us a sense of how many people in Iran would be in favour of keeping this regime if they had that choice of electing it or not? Clearly, the regime is looking to sustain itself, to remain in power. Donald Trump seeking some kind of change there, but not quite sure what his plan is in terms of making that happen. What about the people of Iran? What would they want?
Well, I think it's important to acknowledge that there is a diversity of voices inside Iran, as well as, I mean, that's before we get to outside Iran, which diaspora politics have their own sphere of influence. Inside Iran, the most reliable public opinion data that we have from about 2 years ago shows that they largely are in favor of a secular democracy, a separation of religion and state. And most people believe that without fundamental changes to the system, there will not be positive outcomes for people's ordinary lives in relation to what they currently have. Having said that, nationalist sentiment has tended to spike in times of foreign intervention or attacks from foreign powers, not only in Iranian history, but it's a known phenomenon in political science. It's called rallying around the flag effect. We've seen it all over the world. So it is, at this point, of course, we can't get reliable data in the midst of a very serious bombing campaign, but I would expect that many people will have more deeply entrenched opinions now than they did before, and the entrenchment of their existing positions. So if they were already against the Islamic Republic, they are even more so now for most of them. And if they were already in support, then they are supporting it even more so now. Of course, that could shift. The more the civilian toll rises, depending on what kind of outcomes of these interventions and these attacks we see in the coming days and weeks. But it is possible also, besides deeper entrenchment, that some people will be rallying around the flag and will push back. Even though they may not be in favor of an Islamic Republic, they will push back for the sake of the territorial integrity of the country and their survival against foreign attacks.
Sahar Razavi, thank you for joining us, Director of the Iranian and Middle East Studies Center at the California State University. Join us live from Sacramento there.